So like the content and SEO marketing, right? Do you have core principles of content marketing that you think are essential? It might be good to like set a stage, and especially we have audiences from both large organizations and startups.
Yeah. So there's a couple key things when I think about with content marketing in particular, and we can also talk about SEO as well and how that bleeds into it. I'd say the first thing is don't just do content for the sake of doing content. I've been doing this long enough where you used to have to convince SLT or your leadership team that content was worth doing and worth investing in. Now that buy-in is there, and that's great, but that also means people are just doing content for the sake of it. You have to have some sort of plan and measurement framework in place for why you're doing your content. It's not always going to work. It's kind of like finding product market fit, but you want to make sure that you're doing it somewhat strategically instead of just doing it for the sake of doing it. Secondly, I think you have to have your goals and measurement in mind. This content is going to drive X, Y, and Z because of Y and Z, whether it's audience marketing, brand awareness, driving people through the funnel, retention marketing. Have some idea of what you want your content to do. I also think content is hard and it's getting harder. The tools to make the initial content have expanded a lot, and I hope we can talk about that later. But that also means standing out from the crowd gets harder. Really having relevant, useful, educational, data-informed content is just harder than ever. And then finally, I would strongly encourage everyone to spend just as much time distributing their content as they do creating it. For a lot of people, particularly like me, if you are trained as, as a writer or as a creator, the work itself feels like a project or a product, and you put it out and then you kind of don't worry about it too much. You're on to the next one. But really focusing on that distribution is what is going to make the content impactful across your business metrics.
Can I follow up with something
Yeah.
around the distribution? Like, what are some best practices for distribution?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. It depends on, stage, company, and what type of content you're doing. But what I would encourage, like when you're creating a core piece of content, whether it's a video asset, a downloadable asset, think through where your audience is actually going to get this. So if it's going through SEO, there's going to be some optimizations you're going to do with that. If it's going through email, you want to make sure it's relevant for that channel, for that audience. Same if it's going through these social platforms. You want that distribution to partially inform like the content itself upstream, but then as you're pushing it through these channels, make sure that it's optimized for these channels, relevant to the audience through these channels as well.
Hmm.
So an example of that could be if you are doing, we all B2B SaaS kind of thing, you do state of the union reports on whatever for, metric pools for marketing, AI on there. If you're going to be distributing this through TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, you can build that into the overall content structure itself from the very beginning so that you have a better chance of it resonating across those channels with those audiences.
Oh, interesting. So would you think about let's say you have this big piece of like white paper for like 30
Yeah.
pages, and then you say, okay, here are the top 10 takeaways that I want to create shorter videos for.
Yep.
Or is it like after, or are you thinking, well, I know I'm gonna create, 5 pieces of clips, and let's work into that plan. How are you thinking about structuring it, and when do you actually plan it out?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on team and capabilities, but ideally you're doing both, right? Like from the beginning, this core asset is going to be distributed across these things. So if you can already build those short summary clips, right? Your executive summary pieces for it during the creation process, that just makes things a lot easier when you're distributing it moving forward. Now, it's hard organizationally as well, depending on how big your company is. Sometimes the team that makes the white paper isn't the team that shares it on the content side of things. So you can get around that either by heads up briefing on the different teams. But ideally, if you can create all of that at the same time, it just makes it for a much better play on the distribution side. As well as I think better content too, because the content is only good if people actually consume it. And that's what I'm saying of the half of the focus should be on the distribution. Because if you have great content and nobody sees it, it's actually not great content.
Yeah, yeah. Final follow up on this because like
Sure.
distribution is so important, but like not a lot of people talk a lot about it. What are some of your like favorite channels to distribute? Do you have your top three? And like, or is it like really by audience? And what are some rule of
Yeah.
thumbs around that?
I think it is by audience, like where does your audience mostly hang out? And so broad strokes, though, like I still think SEO is a powerful distribution channel and will continue to be, particularly around your branded terms and very specific things because of the intent-based nature of it. You're literally telling the machine you want something, and it's telling you this is relevant to it. And then, of course, where your audience is for like B2B SaaS, I think there's a big push, of course, on LinkedIn with thought leadership on there, a little bit of X, but go to where your audience is. Like if your audience is on Reddit, if you have your consumer brands that are on TikTok, Instagram, you have to really go towards those distribution ends. And then I still think your owned audience eventually, once you're at that stage, is a powerful distribution channel as well. Your own direct connections through email, if you have an in-app the in-app messaging that can be a really powerful distribution channel as well.